These are from Ribera del Duero, these clones. Prior to 2018, I think it is, in Australia, you could only get clones from Rioja or Toro or Valdepeñas, different parts of Spain, but you couldn't get Ribera del Duero clones. Talked to Yilama Nursery. Nick Dry was there at the time, and I think they brought in 5, and 3 of them were the ones I wanted. We were the first, or one of the first, to have this particular clone in bottle.
Today we're chatting to Raquel Jones, the founder and winemaker at Weathercraft in Beechworth. I'm Jason.
And I'm Trent, and we're here on an unapologetically unprofessional, unfiltered wine journey. And we're saying here, Jace.
Our saying is drink more, try more, learn more. And don't forget to like, comment and subscribe. Raquel, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
We're here on site in this beautiful tasting room. The sun is shining. Beechworth is fantastic, don't you think?
Yeah, Beechworth just brings on the weather every single day, it feels like.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, we're going to learn a bit about your journey. We're going to learn a bit about Weathercraft and Beechworth, go through a few of the wines. But as always, we go through the wind-up icebreaker questions. I'm going to hand over to Trent.
Most memorable wine.
I did actually think about this question, and I don't know if I have one that's like really specific. And I think it's to do with when you have wine, it's about the experience, the people who are with you. So when I've traveled to Spain and seen family, we've had some beautiful Tempranillo. So that to me would definitely be standout. There's a Ribera del Duero producer called Alejandro Fernandez who has a Pesquera label. So that's normally the go-to when I'm overseas with friends and family. But I'm a bit of a bubbles person.
Fantastic.
So yeah, I do enjoy. It just depends if it's oysters or if it's, depending on the food. So I can't actually pick one, but I do love Burgundy for Chardonnay. Yeah, a bit of Chablis, but I'm more that sort of full-bodied person, and Tempranillo and a lot of Grenache and things like that.
Tempranillo is in Spanish reds, right?
Spanish red. It is the Spanish red. Yeah.
What was the last bottle of wine that you had?
Stefano Lubiano. That was it. Yeah, delicious. He won an award in the Young Gun of Wine as well, and he's down in Tassie, and he makes a beautiful Pinot Noir that is biodynamic.
Next one. A person past a present they'll love to have a bottle of wine with, and also what bottle would that be?
So we went to Europe this year, and sitting with producers and talking about their wines is really special. If you think about the past sort of thing, I'm into science, so most people would say someone like sciencey, but for me it'd probably be a producer. And being in Australia, I like producers that are sort of in Beechworth. So I don't know. I couldn't say specifically, but sitting with a producer themselves and talking about their wine, I would definitely go that.
Next one, favourite grape varietal. I can guess, but...
you could guess. People would say it's Tempranillo. I love Chardonnay. I really do. I mean, I'm in Beechworth. That's the main reason we came here. But I do love Tempranillo as well if I look for reds. But for me, definitely Chardonnay. It's my go-to. Yeah. I'll always pick a Chardonnay if I'm out.
Next one, calling on your Spanish roots as well. A big part of the whole wine scene is also the food scene as well. Any kind of fantastic, unique food and wine pairings you could kind of enlighten us on?
Actually. So Albarino, as an example, goes really, really well with olives because it has that sort of brininess, that sort of saline. And being summer and stuff, I recently had some fish that was crusted with some breadcrumbs and some green olives. And yes, fish is obviously made for Albarino, but the actual olives, it just was like a match made in heaven. It was delicious. It just brought out both characters in the wine and the food. Delicious pairing.
Okay, next one, for people embarking or thinking about going on their wine journey, any advice you would want to give them?
Don't be afraid to go with something that you are heartfelt and feeling. A lot of people may or may not tell you that you're doing the wrong thing or the right thing, but just definitely push forward and don't be afraid to do different things within the industry, whether it be in the vineyard or in the winery, that you really feel like you're wanting to do. Basically don't let anyone tell you no. Just give it a go and see what you can do.
Follow your gut as well.
Follow your gut. Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. That's the icebreaker question.
Look, and I do want to carry on from the last point that you made there, because when I read and listen about you and your journey, the word fearless comes to mind. And
oh, wow. Okay.
And and to me, that's part of being able to jump out of whatever it is that you've been previously doing and say, this is what I want to pursue. I want to be a winemaker. I want to have my own winery.
Yeah.
And be fearless and make the jump. Let's talk about the origins of that. What was the moment that you decided, I don't want to do what I'm currently doing. I want to be a winemaker?
I think there were a lot of moments. It wasn't just one. Mum and Dad are quite old school, so they sort of steered me towards, you had to be a lawyer, a doctor, an accountant. So even though, Dad had market gardens at the time and I was always out with him and I loved nature and science, I did follow what my parents wanted. So I ended up doing law, but I didn't complete my articles just probably despite them. But yeah, in terms of moments, like I always felt like I wasn't achieving my full potential. And, growing a crop, I just wanted to grow something initially. That was the initial thing. And then going into my 20s, when you get introduced to wine, and even in sort of that high school period, my brother and sister are a lot older, so we had rooms at home. So anyone that would come from overseas would stay at our place and people would bring wine and it'd be this occasion. And I would sit and listen and I was just fascinated. And people came from all over different parts of the world, brought wines, explained it. It was a really big deal. And then I was introduced to more wine, particularly Australian wine, by my brother-in-law. Mount Mary was one of the wines that he enjoyed the most. I think it was a quintet. And just listening to his story and me trying this wine. And yes, there was wine growing up. We had a guy called Johnny who used to make wine and Dad had grapes that he would make wine with. It was so bad. But
in reflection or
reflection, because you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
And then just having other wines and just going, wow, this is amazing that this grape that you eat that has all this sugar can create this delicious dry or whatever the wine is. For me that was just like amazing, and it was a bit about the science. So fast forwarding, it was really meeting my husband, selling my business. He sold a business. We went overseas for a bit of a break. That the discussions that we'd constantly had, or that I had constantly had previously, came to the fore. And so we were in I think it was the south of France. It would have been near Bandol. Actually, I don't quite remember, but we're sitting there and yes, we probably would have had some wines, but we did a pros and cons about, if we're going to do this, this will be the time.
Yeah.
And so it sort of went from there. In terms of making, I did do little bits and pieces myself here and there, bought fruit and made just really home stuff. But once we knew we were coming up here, just trying to really figure out what I liked. And I do drink a lot of wines overseas. Yeah. I try to understand them from a science perspective, but also from, a making perspective. And that's how I gained inspiration for what styles I wanted to make. Yeah, just give it a go. Don't be afraid to pursue something that others might perceive as crazy, because we moved up here. We gave up the so-called white picket fence and, what we had going on to start a new, we've still got off-farm business. My husband still runs his business, but this was a second career for me. And I was at the top of my game here, and I've come to the absolute bottom in some ways to learn. And you could be in here for 20 years and you'd still be learning.
Which is why fearless, I think, still stands out, because to make that leap, it's a courageous leap to do. But you've done something where you've moved from one field into another, and you've been able to bridge the gap somehow in terms of knowledge and experience. You're able to talk through what did you do to bridge the gap to go from one field and now winemaker? Yeah,
someone else asked me this. The best way I learn is to literally throw myself into it. Some people call it the deep end, but I'm pretty agile in terms of understanding things. I did go back to uni after I had my daughter, and I did some biochemistry and just to get back into the swing of it, and then moved over to the Charles Sturt course once we knew we were coming up here, and I'd done the viticulture studies prior to that. For me, it's about just throwing myself in. I did take on a mentor early on because I thought, this is a big investment. We'd reached a point in our lives where, at sort of 30-something, I think it was like 34 or something, you've built up something. you don't want to just lose it, because it's a big deal to start from scratch at that point. So because of that big investment, and yes, we knew business, but we didn't completely know agricultural business and viticultural business. We did ask a lot of questions, and I still ask questions. Like, I think that's, if you think you are the smartest person in a room, you're in the wrong room. Like, move on. But so I took on a mentor, but it's very quick to see how you grow if you really are enjoying it. And I knew I was on the right path because I loved absolutely everything. In terms of the vineyard, Mark Walpole from Fighting Gully, who you know, we called on him because I said, he since has become like world famous viticulturalist, but he knew the region, he knew vines, he knew this site. So I said to him, I just want to have you walk with me for the first year and just let me ask you absolutely everything and anything. He was so patient. He's still my little guru that I call on, and I learned a lot. You learn a lot from people like that if you're willing to listen and be humble. And I know quite a lot about legal stuff, but what I don't know, I need to learn. So you ask questions.
And so while we're talking, it's a good opportunity to try some of the wines from Weathercraft. Thank you so much for bringing a selection here. We'll just show this to the screen. And I'd like you to pronounce it because...
Yeah, so this is Albarino.
That's the way to say it.
Which is a Spanish white grape variety. It's also called Alvarinho, which is found in Portugal in a region of Vinho Verde, which literally translates to green wine, but it's not to do with the fact that it's green wine. It's an Iberian variety and it's white.
And I'm so happy that you pronounced it because I would not have any...
I don't mind how anyone pronounces it. Albarino,
that's what I would be saying.
Yeah.
Now, I've probably had a couple of these, and you shared one recently. But to be honest, every time I have it at a restaurant, I'm getting this very strong, salty flavor, almost overpowering that I'm not used to it. And I don't know if that's the style and that's how it's meant to be.
Yeah, it's interesting. So intrinsically, I think the best way to describe it is, yes, it has to do with environment. And obviously, Rías Baixas in the Galician region of Spain has the Atlantic Ocean, and that does impart that sort of salty air and that sort of thing. Yeah. However, Albarino has this naturally high acidity that on the palate can actually translate into this brininess and that sort of saltiness. So it is a varietal characteristic, but yes, it can also be something that is brought about by environment. For me, thinking about the white variety I wanted to grow that was Iberian and putting it into my vineyard, I thought a lot about it. There is a sub-region of Galicia and the Rías Baixas called Condado do Té. At its furthest innermost point, it is very similar in distance from the ocean to where we sit here. And the topography is similar in terms of mountains, we're in valleys as well. And they do predominantly have granite. And we have, not all of our vineyard is granite, but we do have granite positions. So for me, I found this place in the vineyard where the granite rock is actually quite thick and close to the surface. So I thought, I'm going to give this a go. And yeah, you do get it. And techniques as well, so winemaking techniques, like I've barrel fermented this, but just that lees aging can actually incorporate some of that flavour back into the palate of the wine.
It's definitely like not all of the other ones that I've had, which is a good thing in my mind because it was just overpoweringly salty. But I think you said brine and pairing this with olives, and I can already imagine that here, and that textural element to it is quite nice on the mouth.
Yeah,
it's so good.
Yeah, I find maybe with the barrel aging as well, it adds a bit more texture to it as well.
It certainly does, yeah.
And I don't know, is there a bit of like residual sugar to it? It's that sweetness that kind of balances with the acidity. Yeah,
this is dry. It probably has maybe it's definitely under 0.5, so it's not something that is in it per se. However, you'll get you're obviously salivating when you drink this wine. That high acidity will create that salivation. changes within your actual mouth could be perceived as sweetness.
Yeah.
Alcohol too can be perceived as sweetness. This is not a high alcohol wine, but it's a lighter bodied wine. So a lot of those factors can play into that, and the textures as well from barrel fermentation for sure.
Yeah. Almost feels like a Spanish version of the Riesling type of thing. It's like that has that zing to it. Yeah.
If people come in and they say, I'm like, what kind of wines do you like? I like Riesling, I like Sauv Blanc, I'm like, okay, try these 2 wines. So I'll give them like some options and they're like, wow, I've never tried this before. And yeah, the whole story about Albarino coming into Australia is really interesting too. You've obviously talked about Sauvignon in past episodes and how there was that big boo-boo. It's definitely Albarino. But like I discovered Sauvignon through that, and I really enjoy Sauvignon as well. Golden Bull makes a fabulous one next.
There we go. Great tips.
Yeah.
I definitely need to have more Albarino. While we're going through it, let's chat a bit about Weathercraft. The name? Well, where's the name come from?
Okay, so some people have said, do you do anything with ships or boats? And I'm like, absolutely not. So yeah, I get that sort of aspect. But Weathercraft came together as one word. So the weather kept coming up in conversation when we were talking about what we were, when we were thinking about the brand and what we were trying to achieve. And so too did craft, because it is a craft. It is something that people do with their hands, from the vineyard to the winery. But there's craftiness also in, the consideration of what you do in both the vineyard and the winery. So those 2 words just kept coming up, and so we just put them together. So Weathercraft, we figured like a one word would be good. Yeah.
It has to resonate, and you've got a meaning behind it. You've also, you've had this label that's been on there, and we've seen on social media, it's going to change.
It is going to change, yeah. So this is our 9th commercial vintage that we're going into, but we've sort of been doing this in terms of the business for almost 10 years. Initially, we wanted a face to bring that weather and craft to life, and I had wanted Dad. He was not well when we took over, and by the time we did photos, just couldn't sit. So long story short, we almost gave up. My father-in-law probably would have wanted to do this, but not quite the look that we were looking for. So this gentleman we met, my husband did, and he looks like my dad. Like, it's just uncanny. So Dad had the hair, he had the coif, but he also has this look about him that you think he's got a few good stories to tell. He's been around. Yes, he's weathered. But for me, it was that kind of bringing my childhood forward. Now, we are doing probably, I guess you could call it a revolution, but it could more be like an evolution at the moment. There's 2 things to it. We've obviously had lots of feedback. Initially, we wanted to stand out on a shelf. It stands out on a shelf. Now it's more about what's in the bottle, and people know the name. People know the wine, and we want to move to that next we are moving to that next upper echelon where we are competing not just domestically but internationally. So, conservatism, all that comes into it. And we don't want to be polarizing in any way. But for me, I think, Dad's passed. It's sort of like almost like a large stepping stone forward. We are doing a secondary label. So there'll be Elemental by Weathercraft. And the separation is primarily because everything that I make on this vineyard will be under the Weathercraft label, and hand on heart, it'll be the best I can make in any vintage. And if I think that a vessel or a barrel of whatever doesn't necessarily tie in with what I'm envisioning, then that'll go to the secondary label, as well as fruit that we buy. So the Weathercraft will be here, and then still really good quality, still approachable. We've listened to a lot of people in the industry, so the secondary label will meet the market.
Have you landed on a label yet? Is it something we'll see, and when?
I actually wanted to show you guys, but it's not quite there yet, and I was told not to, but yes is the short answer. But yeah, we're almost there, and it's just something that I feel like I may have built this up too much, so I'm hoping no one's going to be disappointed. But yeah, look, there'll be a bit of an emblem that will tie it in. It all ties in back to us, but it's something that's a little bit more obvious. And yeah, so we're hoping that the Weathercraft, the name will be the predominant force going forward, with a little symbol of sorts. And then Elemental by Weathercraft will be the subsidiary.
I think you're right in terms of evolution. It's like, oh, your dad's helped you to this point, and it's now dad's going, now you can carry on now and make it your own. Yeah.
Thank you. That's really nice. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, for sure. No, it's definitely a passion thing, and something I probably should have done a long time ago, but I'm here now.
I don't know about you, but you've hyped that up a lot. I'm very excited to see it. I'm dying to see it, to be honest.
You're going to look at it and go, oh, it's so good.
So in the next vintage is
so 2025, we've actually put wine into bottle as a clean skin waiting for this label. So there are some 24s that will have the new label. But 2025 onwards, we'll definitely should all have the new label going forward. Yeah.
Oh, super exciting. Okay.
I'm thinking understated elegance. So.
Oh my God, that is on our branding form. Yeah, well done. Okay.
Have you been in the
I'm vibing it. That's great.
All right, so we might move on to the next wine. This one I can pronounce, which is good. So it's the 2022 Chardonnay from Weathercraft.
Yeah, so this is the Estate Chardonnay. So you'll notice as we go through these, some have white labels, some have black labels. The black labels have been sort of the ones I make in the really amazing years. But going forward, it won't be separated in such a way. The separation will come from the positioning in the actual vineyard.
So when you say positioning, you're doing like little separate plots for...
I've gotten to know my vineyard over the last decade. So there are different soil profiles throughout the entire vineyard. And the varieties that I have been placed in those areas that are best suited to that variety or suited to the style of variety I'm trying to achieve. As an example, there's clay and gravel for our Syrah, which gives a lot more power. Some of our Chardonnay does sit in some clay and gravel. There's granite in some other areas, schist, decomposed mudstone. So we've done all these soil tests to really determine what suits best.
That's probably part of your science background coming through in terms of doing the analysis and experimentation to see where the best site is. How did you go across Victoria or across Australia in searching for this site here in Beechworth? What was it that made you go, A, I'm going to Beechworth, B, I'm choosing this site?
Yeah, well, that's a great question. We definitely didn't look across Australia. We, my partner's, my husband now, family was in Melbourne at the time. So we didn't want to be too far away from Melbourne. But that said, my parents are from Spain. They spent 7 years in Switzerland before they came here to Australia, and they came through Bonagilla. And they were one of the last lot of immigrants to do that. And in doing so, they spoke Italian and Spanish. They met a lot of people. So growing up, I used to come up here a lot because they had friends. Like we'd make tomato and salami and all sorts of stuff and go pig hunting or whatever. So there was a connection there. And then as I grew up and, I continued coming here, and the wines obviously started to play a role. And for my husband, it was similar. So his family had, they'd run cattle around and all sorts, but he had ties to the area as well. So, and he loved the wines. Now, to answer your question, we wanted a region that was small. We wanted a region that we could make a real difference in. We wanted a region that was prized for Chardonnay or Pinot Noir, but definitely Chardonnay. So there was this list of things, and Beechworth checked a lot more of those boxes. It is 3 hours from Melbourne on a good day. So there is a bit of that thing about distance, but also, what we could afford and what we wanted. You couldn't really buy close to Melbourne. And we did look at Yarra Valley, but it's just such a broad region. So long story short, we came up here, started looking at property, and everyone who does sell a property tends to let it go. This one wasn't let go. The guy who had this, his name was Roland Volkist, and he was originally the chief winemaker for Brown Brothers and later got promoted to CEO of Brown Brothers. So he planted the original vineyard in 1998 with the view to put a winery up and make wine. And after the promotion, he started selling fruit to Yalumba, Lange-Joran, and some other boutique wineries. So when we found this site, it not only checked all the boxes, but it was, just down the road from some of our favourite wineries and in this region. And, we don't have the complete overlooking sort of vistas, but it's such a beautiful, and it's like a little alcove. So this particular property is about 40 acres and we have just under 12 under vine, but it used to be part of this massive property that was owned by one of the local grazier families, and it was subdivided in the mid-90s. And so Indigo has part of it. Other people have bought other parts. So it was really big. It was known as a big valley. So some parts were fertile, some parts were really rocky, and it was a difficult kind of land to use for one sole purpose. So cutting it up sort of made sense. But it just went ping.
Yeah.
So for Chardonnay was one of the key things that this site's very important on. And
there was, yes, you can put Chardonnay. Yes, we did soil tests for that sort of thing. For me, it was also about the Tempranillo. We'll move to the Tempranillo eventually and I'll explain. But it was making Spanish wines for me is a way of just holding what's dear to my heart even closer. So I couldn't make wine and not make Spanish varieties. So that was definitely an important prerequisite for the site. And I think Beechworth is perfect for Tempranillo. I think in the past, a lot of people have planted not just Tempranillo, but different varieties for different reasons and not really thought about the soil and the type of soil that it's going into. Some people haven't understood certain grape varieties as well as they could, probably because they don't do what they want them on their particular site. So it was really about the site, the weather. I was hoping the community was good, and it is.
Yes.
So, absolutely.
You understood the science behind it.
The science is everything. I don't come from wine. So for me, it was really about the science initially. And absolutely. And I want to make like the best wine I can make. Yeah. I'm OCD. People who know me worry sometimes. But, you need to, if I was going to do this, it had to be proper.
Yeah.
This wasn't a fly-by-night thing. We weren't going to do this for a year. We were called, I think, Ken and Barbie initially when we came here. I think we've earned our stripes.
What are you called now?
I don't know. I should ask. No, it's very different now. But we came from a place that people couldn't understand, going back to that first question. They just couldn't understand why we would do this. But it wasn't ever going to be just a thing. It was not fantasy. This is the real deal.
You started in 2014. It's 10 years on.
No, we started looking in 2014. Yeah, so we turned the key to our forever home in 2016. So it's sort of like a hybrid year. And then in 2017, we registered and started the label. Yeah. And but I'd done a few little batches before that. Yeah.
So 7 years on.
Yeah, going into our ninth vintage,
How's that evolution been? How has that journey been in reflection?
Oh my God, we are in such a different place to where we started. I mean, there's so much in that. We have been as a country, a world, have been through COVID. We've had bushfires here. We've had floods. Like, it's not a great start to a business startup, and Mother Nature is cruel, and it's a big deal. Like, you lose fruit, you lose money. But I think when we first started as well, the notion of what we were going to do has also changed so much. Like, if I had my time again, I would have done a lot more Chardonnay a lot earlier. The Shiraz that we were making initially was great, but it's such at the time, now, South Australia's pulled out half of their stuff and the whole thing with China really affected. But like back then it was so hard to sell Shiraz. So, Beechworth is a region that makes great Shiraz, but people tend to gravitate towards regions they know. You've got to make money. So I think, long story short, the evolution has been an absolute learning curve. We are in a place now where, people come to me and ask questions, and I'm like, right, we need to have a coffee and sit down and talk about this. So I'm much more confident. We are much more confident, and we are so much more invested emotionally in this than ever before because we can really see how good it is.
Yeah. I think that's the resilience shining through. You know what you want to do. You're going to stick through it regardless.
You just stick to it. Yeah. Well, you make your bed, you lie in it. I don't know. I'm definitely a survivor. I'm built to, I look for solutions. I try not to make problems. Had a lot of problems, but we look for solutions.
Is that Spanish fire kind of coming through?
God, no. A lot of Spanish people like to complain. My mum's one of them, but
all mums are like
all
that.
Mums are like that. Look, I don't know what it is. Yeah. I've just always been like that. I've always just, someone says no to me, I feel like, yeah, watch me. So, yeah, and I love being a lot of people have probably underestimated me in different ways. And so I love that satisfaction you get when they look at you and go, oh my God, I did not see that coming.
Proving people wrong.
Well, I think there's a bit of a terrible element in that, but it's more about proving to myself that I can do this and you're not going to tell me what I can and can't do.
Which I think is a great lesson for people and with kids as well. Like that's what I want to show my kids. If you can keep on going through pursuing your passion, then it's a fantastic thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
The Chardonnay itself, what did you think?
Yeah, I was thinking about the body of it, but also like I feel like at the start I could get like the granite coming through, but the fruit really shines in my mind.
It's fruit driven, yeah.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you say that because it's all about what I taste mid-vintage. Like I'm walking down, I'm trying to capture that in the bottle. And Chardonnay is one of those styles that, you can do a lot to it in the winery, and I try not to. So the 22 year was not completely tricky, but it was a tricky year. And this particular style of Chardonnay, when I was talking about the different levels, so I make one, there's a market for everything. So one is more wooded. This one is more my balanced Chardonnay. In the 22 year, the natural acidity is a bit higher. So malic acid, I don't go through full malo on this particular Chardonnay. That said, the 22 year had a higher level of malic acid because it was a lower pH and more difficult to sort of go through malo entirely. So I had to sort of find ways to bring balance to the wine. So of all the vintages, I'd probably say the 22 I participated in a little bit more. And in participating, I mean, I did certain techniques like a batonnage, or I used a bit more of the pressings, which are the last bit of juice that you press off that's closer to the skins and pips, which is normally more bitter. But it has, if it's good, it can have a lot of flavour and add complexity to a wine that is otherwise not one-dimensional, but can require a little bit of a difference. So it was an interesting year for me, and I'm really happy with the wine. It's come together. I tend to put my wines out a bit too early because the 20 year we lost everything to smoke. So there's always been this sort of, catch up going on. And as our wines are more wanted and more in demand, I've had to sort of put things out a bit earlier than I'd like, but it's drinking so well.
Balance is the word that sticks out in my mind.
Balance is key. I think every winemaker tries to achieve that.
Yeah. And so we're going to move on to, let me open this up, the 2023 Amphora GSM.
This is a cool one.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's do it. So Amphora, I've got some Spanish amphora, which they're called tinaja in Spanish, and they're 1,000 litres. I've got a little one as well, but they're sort of that big, fat start and then small, narrow bottom. Terracotta, handmade, so they all vary slightly. And I do a white wine, which is an Amphora Blanco, which is a Albarino and Chardonnay blend in amphora, which was a bit of an experiment for me. We couldn't find another wine in Australia like it in terms of the blend. I think there's one in America that they do, but they use oak. So in amphora, you cannot hide. So oak will cover up some things. It's all about the purity of fruit with a terracotta vessel. So you really need to have pristine fruit. Now, making a red wine in amphora, particularly a GSM, is, I think, a bit risky because, first of all, you don't have oak. So tannin-wise, you are relying on skins and pips. And if you're using whole bunches, you're relying on that rachis as well for some, tannin backbone. Now, you need tannin, particularly in red wines, for lasting potential and aging potential, as well as acidity can age too. So for me, I was really trying to think, how do I do this? And this particular year, the Shiraz and the Grenache sort of ripened in similar times, so it was about 2 days difference. So I co-fermented those two in this amphora. Using amphora, again, it gives a lot more aromatics to a wine. Where a oak will slowly tame tannins, amphora doesn't really tame tannins. It sort of does do a gentle movement, but it's a little bit different. So there's always going to be that brightness and that purity of fruit. So long story short, co-fermented the Grenache and the Shiraz, later picked the Mourvedre, and Mourvedre is where it's at. So Mourvedre has the tannin, has the herbaliciousness, and it really has that grunt that sort of really pulls together everything. So that was fermented separately. And then once it was fermented, the remaining mixture was all blended in and then left to sit on skins for, I can't even remember now, probably about 2 to 3 weeks. And then it was pressed off and put back into the amphora. And then I did not rack. Normally you would. But it was tasting and smelling pretty good. So it's such an interesting wine. There's a bit of, obviously the Grenache. It's funny, like people say, how do you describe it? If you've had a GSM, it can knock your socks off. It's pretty tannic. It's really like you got to let it. But this amphora red, you can have it early or you can let it age. So it's actually approachable right now. And will develop further later on. Whereas a standard GSM, you'd probably have to kind of wait a while.
Yeah. On the nose, it was like it does kind of strike you with kind of the blackberry and plums, but then on the palate, it's the texture that kind of gets me.
Yeah.
It's like this kind of really fine grained texture, but then it sits at the back, on the sides, on the back. And the aromas that you mentioned is also big. It's almost like carbonic style. That really,
it almost is, but it wasn't. But no, it almost is. Yeah. But I think also, like with this sort of style of winemaking, you get that sort of pepperiness in the Shiraz come forward, as well as, and the red fruits in the Grenache really tie it together. For a blend, for me, and what I've learnt from people I've spoken to all over the world, with red blends, they almost need to merge into one and become like a new variety in itself. So the longer you leave them together, the more of a emulsified union of those varieties, come forward. So yeah, it was trying to get them together as quickly as I possibly could, so they could just, decide who was doing what and get it going.
What's the percentage split again?
Yeah. So I think it was, we aimed for around about 60% Grenache, was probably a little bit less than that.
Yeah.
And then there was probably about 5% Mataro with the Shiraz sitting in the middle there.
That's so drinkable. I don't know about you.
It's really good. So we didn't have a Pinot Noir, and I did make like a younger style Tempranillo, which was, you could cool it, whatever. Like it was just a smashable kind of red for those people that were looking for something that was different, because Tempranillo has that spectrum where you can pair it with foods that you would otherwise pair a Pinot Noir. Now, I'm thinking I could do something that is quite sort of like Rhone-like, but also can be seen as something that could be an alternative to Pinot Noir. So yeah, the amphora wines are not the wines I make money on.
Yeah.
They're my wines that I love, being creative with. So yeah, I love them. I love talking about them. I love showing them. So thank you for liking it.
Oh, smashable is the right word when you say that.
No, and it does have some tannin. It does.
Yes.
Yeah. It's like, it's mouth watering, but has this savoury finish to it.
Yeah, it does. And it does have some nice acid in it still. Like the Grenache was not as high in sugar as I would have liked to have picked it, but I'm actually thinking that's done it justice, to be honest, because it's just balanced everything.
But why amphora? You must have had that thought somewhere, or
I love them. I love them. Like, they've been around for millennia. They're just the most incredible vessel. The different size, and size makes a difference. Different parts of the amphora have different temperatures. So there's like this pull that occurs because of that. And when the CO2 is going during fermentation, there's almost like this vertical pull. So the lees down the bottom, I don't have to stir them because they gently move and just disintegrate into it. So there's this, the most elegant, gentle purity of fruit is what Georgians always bang on about. And what do Georgians mostly use? They use amphora. So, yeah, I'd been overseas many times and tried so many different wines and different amphoras. But so Rick from Gioconda makes a Roussanne in amphora, and we love it. And so I went over to him and I said, oh, yeah, I'm thinking of doing this white. And, anyway, so he and Doug helped us import them from Spain because he has a place in Spain and he loves all things Spanish, so that was good for me. So Tinajos came in and I just thought, wow, this is just, there's a romanticism about them.
Absolutely.
You don't want to move them too much. They're shit to clean.
Yeah.
Like, it's just, but hey, they're beautiful.
Yeah. I love the purity of fruit element to it. I think it's just treated like that.
You talked about the science background in terms of winemaking, but also one thing I noticed as well about this whole sustainability push as well. Like, you're talking about sheep and duck. That's very natural and not science-based. It is
very natural. No. And look, I've been for things and then became against things. And so for me, growing up with European parents and anyone who has, everything is about simplicity and as close to nature as you can get it. So, I didn't grow up, like, we weren't very wealthy, but we had a sea in Gippsland, we had a lake, we had friends who had farms. Like, we'd go off with a couple of families and choose a cow or a sheep, and then the butcher would do his bit, and then we'd have this food that would last us the whole year, and we'd fish and we'd grow vegetables. So we didn't go to the supermarket for a lot, yeah? So for me, it's always been about that. I think it's just because it's how I grew up. So when I taste food or when I taste things, I appreciate the difference that growing something yourself makes. Now, on top of that, it's how it's grown.
Yeah.
And it is about the soil. And there are so many ways to do things that don't need chemicals. I just feel like in Europe, as an example, glyphosate is illegal. We have not used any herbicide since coming onto this farm, and conventional farming, things are residual in the soil. So you have to sort of think about it. So we've actually tested grapes to make sure that, tested wines to see if there's glyphosate, and there is residual in some wines that you find. So for us, it was a big deal. And when you talk about sustainability, like, you're the caretaker of this land, and, I don't know if my daughter's ever going to take it on, but, you're leaving it. You want to leave a better place to what you found. And the way to do that is to be kind to it. And, the soil feeds us. So anything, you wouldn't, put something in the toilet and eat it, would you? No. So why would you put something in the soil, grow something in it, and then eat it? Like, it's sort of similar. And I know there are a lot of people that go, oh, but, it's fine if you want to have blinders on and just do, that's fine. But for me, I can't do that. And if I'm going to do something, it's a privilege for me to know the grape's life cycle from berry to bottle, because, that's special to me. And, sheep, lots of nitrogen, not so much sheep, lots of
chickens
compaction.
and ducks.
Chickens and ducks are better, yes, but they are, there's a lot of crap that goes on literally there. And so, but you look for different ways. Like, it's so much work to not spray herbicide, because you have to go in and you do things manually, and you have machines that do things, but you got to do more passes. It's a lot more work. And so you go into a shop and you buy a wine and you think, oh, this is really affordable. Ask yourself, why is it affordable? Because wine is not affordable to make. The bigger you have as a vineyard, costs get absorbed into a larger amount of yield. And the smaller you are, the more obvious it is. However, the larger you are, the harder it is to be. People say sustainability, they use it like a thing. Let's talk serious. Like it's not just about sustainability. It's about, using less synthetic chemicals. And you can't do that very well if you are very big, but you can if you definitely put your mind to it. But it means the wine will be more expensive. And are people going to pay that? I don't know. So it's an issue. But I love what I do. We're small enough where we can do it properly, do all of that. My husband thinks, 1 year it's like, oh my God, this is really, 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 really expensive. But, you want to do it properly. And look, the wines are just great, and that's why.
It's like building your own ecosystem, right? With like
absolutely
the butterflies, the birds, the insects. Really. Yeah.
Like you listen to like Cullen wines, like they do the same thing. Like they're big, but they do it. Like you can do it, and it makes things better. So I don't know. I just I'm not going to get on my high horse or anything because people can do whatever they want. But for me, it is important.
You also do wild yeast as well, right?
Yeah, I do wild yeast. That's not to say I haven't used cultured in the past. I think you're kind of silly to use wild in years where, there's been lots of rain and, fruit might be a little bit compromised. But, each to their own. But, wild yeast really does bring a difference to the wine, a uniqueness. And every vessel is always different, even if you use cultured yeast, but with wild yeast, it's really different. And it is harder with wild yeast because, you don't really know what it's going to do. Yeah. But if you haven't sort of disturbed out there too much, then it can be quite consistent. And if you've fed them, if you need to test nitrogen, you can test that in the juice. So if it's got enough nutrients, then you know that they've got a good start.
And so we're probably on to the last wine, and this is, I feel like we've saved the one that I've wanted to try for last, and it links to your Spanish background. So Tempranillo, is that the right pronunciation?
Tempranillo, well done. Yeah. So double L is a y sound. So double L-O, yo.
There we go. Yeah. And so it's a 2021 vintage.
Yes, this is the first one I did as a black label. So this is a reserve style, the Joven style. I called Joven in Spain. Joven is something you drink every day. They sometimes make it in tank. Doesn't often see oak. Mine did, so it's probably not a true Joven. It's probably more of a crianza if you're looking at like the Ribera sort of differentiation. But the one thing with this and the story I have to tell, which leads on from the other question you said, was these are from Ribera del Duero, these clones. Prior to 2018, I think it is, in Australia, you could only get clones from Rioja or Toro or Valdepeñas, different parts of Spain, but you couldn't get Ribera del Duero clones. And when I was over there several times, I'd tasted fruit in the vineyards, I'd tasted wines with different clones. Speaking the language really helped me because obviously you get to know more. They love talking about it, like the fact that you're interested in a clone, like they're like, whoa, sit down, I've got things to say. So it was wonderful. Came back to Australia, talked to Yalumba Nursery. Nick Dry was there at the time. He gave me the literature that they had been given, which was in Spanish, looked at all. I said, I don't know what you're bringing in. If any of these 3 come in, I would love them. And I think they brought in 5 and 3 of them were the ones I wanted. So it was like a bit of a passion project for me, and it came full circle in 2018 when we first grafted and then planted some. So given that we grafted, we had fruit before most people. I think if not, we were the first or one of the first to have this particular clone in bottle. The reserve is in oak a little bit longer. It has slightly different oak to the Joven, and the 22 has more power. So as the vines find their feet, they are developing more of that sort of meat, licorice, not just a heaviness. It's like people call it an old man sort of style. I don't want an old man style. I want something that hasn't sat in oak for so long that there is no fruit. I want fruit, but I also want that tannin, that softness, that structure, that what I remember. So for me, it was a big project, and trying it in my vineyard, I could close my eyes and it was like I was back in Spain. So it was a big deal. So I'm really happy with it. The 22 has been in bottle for a while. That will be released after this one has gone through. And yeah, I'm really keen to see and hear what people have to say. So far, they've been received really well. But yeah, as they develop more, I can't wait.
You're not using American oak, true Spanish style?
No, I did have like a neutral American that I'd used for one of the Hauvins that I made early on. But no, it's definitely French. But it's not much. If I have like maybe 5 vessels, 1 will be new. So it depends on the year, but it's probably anywhere between 15 to 25% new oak. Sometimes it's second year new oak, so it's been used once before, so it's not imparting a whole lot. But the barrel of the oak that I use can be quite smoky, and so that imparts its own little thing. But it doesn't sit in there for a long time. I put it to neutral after a little while. You just got to keep tasting things.
Yeah, like to me, we use Smashable already, but this is one of those drinks where like I get the red and black fruits that come through, and then there's this like a leathery kind of finish at the end. But it's there's like a chewiness on the tannins that I really enjoy. That structural feel.
There is. It's drinking so well. It does have that sort of almost like a fruit cakeness, but not in that sort of yucky sense. It's it's still got that freshness up front, and then it just pulls you through the glass in a way that you end with this lovely length, and it's just this delicious finish that goes, all right, I want another one. Yeah.
It's not like I would say like a generic fruity Tempranillo. It feels like a bit more of a serious Tempranillo.
Yeah, I hope so, because that's what I tried to achieve. But yeah, and it will get more serious, but not so serious that you won't be able to enjoy it. It'll still be my style. I think with all my wines, it is all about the fruit. And I think, every winemaker has their sort of style, and I think I wasn't really sure what mine was to start with, but after making so many wines over the years now, I've can see what I like. And that's where it's key, where you've really got to keep your mind and your palate open to new things. So keep trying stuff that's not just, definitely not your region, although I do love this region, but drink things that are interesting and different from somewhere else, and different ways of making wine, because it's just, you get to understand more and more you drink, you get to understand the differences.
I like it with that little, the French oak gives that little kick of spice as well.
It does have some spice, yeah. So one of the clones is naturally savoury and spicy, and on the vineyard when you taste it and you bite into like the pips, for example, it is that kind of, you taste it. And that's not to say, like when it does have some whole bunches, and it does have whole berries, and then some of it's crushed. But yeah, there's a bit of every part of that grape in that. Yeah.
Because the one thing is like you talked about kind of like more chewy, but I said more kind of chunkier tannins on it. But then it does feel like you have like a very deft hand in terms of how you kind of do that through the wine. It's like this.
Oh, that's really nice to say. Look, I think it's just a matter, for me, it's about trying it at every sort of stage of the process, because so many things can go wrong. But yeah, trying it, and then like even leaving it in oak, like I still try it sort of on a weekly basis, just to make sure it's still where I want it to be. If it starts to look like, I'll take it out and I'll put that portion in a tank, for example, so I can maintain the rest of it, but that's okay for the moment, and it's not going to have any more oxygen or whatever it is that the vessel's imparting.
Along the Spanish theme, is there any other kind of Spanish varietals you'll be experimenting with?
Not if my husband has anything to do with it.
We did try Viura, I think, in Rioja.
You did?
Yeah.
What did you think of that?
I thought it was, and again, another very interesting.
It is interesting
type of wine.
It's kind of like trying like Greek wines where they've got that it's different. It's like a white, but it's like different, and it can have sort of a bitterness, but it goes really well with food. And I don't know. Like I go overseas and I love white Grenache. So I drink a lot of that when I'm in Spain. It's not as easy to get here, although it is much more so than it was a while ago. But yeah, no, Viura is one of those ones that I almost call it like an old lady's wine, but it's not. It's just what I call it. So it's not good. But yeah, there's lots of wines to experience. And just me talking about Greek wines, like even they're just amazing, like Assyrtiko and all that sort of. It's good to try wines from everywhere.
And so that was probably leading on to any last messages around the future of Weathercraft? Anything you want our audience to hear?
Future of Weathercraft. Well, we're definitely not going anywhere. We're going to be here for a long time. Yeah, I think for us, it's I'm hoping that I've listened enough to all the people that I've encountered over the years to, offer something that is not just something I enjoy to drink, but that others do too. But yeah, I think watch this space. We are definitely doing everything on site from the 2025 year. We'll have our own bottling line. So it'll be grown, made and bottled on the estate, which is quite unique. But yeah, I think for those back home, if you don't know Beechworth or you don't know the smaller regions, you really should. Australia has so much to offer in terms of wine, and it's so much more affordable in terms of its quality compared to other regions overseas. And so, yes, it's great that you look to other regions like Europe and stuff to buy, but try what's in your backyard if you haven't. And yeah, just think about what you are buying when you buy something. Yes, it might be $45 a bottle or $50 a bottle, and that might not be something you do very often, but there's a reason why. It's not just because of a name. Sometimes it's because there's a lot of love and work that goes into it, and you'll benefit from it because you're the one that's going to drink it.
Trent, as we wind up, any last messages, thoughts?
Oh, yeah, just in reflection, again, follow your gut. I loved how, you said fearless and committed in terms of going after what your passion is as well.
Yeah.
And I love it how that's kind of mixed with the kind of deft touch and the kind of blend of science and art in the wines that you create. So I've now seen that kind of journey from 2017 to what it is now. It just feels like it's the platform now to kind of build on.
It is a platform. It's way more solid now than it's ever been. So definitely feel like we're in a good place going forward.
Yeah. So I'm very excited to see what's next for Weathercraft.
Yeah, Raquel, look, I do want to say I think you are inspirational, and
that's nice.
Like, I think about the elements of what makes someone successful. You've got the passion, you've got the persistence. Like if people are against you in any way, you're willing to strive through that. You've got the willing to work through it and learn from other people. So
absolutely,
you've got this great package, and in terms of what you're producing and then what we're tasting here as well. I don't know. I feel like you're absolutely on the projection to be a rock star in there.
Oh, thank you. I wish, but let's. I'm going to take that and I'm going to own it. There you go. Yeah.
But thanks for hosting us here.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for taking us through our wines.
Yeah. Absolutely. Thank you so much, guys. I did look you up quite a bit in the last sort of couple of months, but I love what you do, and I love how you're approaching things, because I don't think enough people have the guts also to do what you do and to be out there and put yourself in front of a group of people and say, I'm going to learn. But well done, because a lot of people want to learn, and you're the ones that are helping those do that.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, well done.
Thank you. Appreciate
Thanks so much. Yeah.
And so that's us at the Wineup. Come to Beechworth. Absolutely try the wines from Weathercraft. As we like to say here, drink more, try more, learn more.